It was 11:47 p.m. when I finally stood in front of the hallway mirror, wearing my mother's blue dress, and my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't button the back, and the only thought in my head was, if my dad walks out of that bedroom right now, my life is over. I was 26, 6'1", broad shoulders that did not disappear no matter how I held them backwards, and I needed to know what the world felt like through a piece of fabric that was not mine. He sneaked out wearing a dress, and I am him. And this is the night I finally stopped performing for everybody else and let myself do the one thing I had been terrified of for almost 20 years. So grab whatever you are drinking, lock the door if you need to, and let me walk you through how I did it, what almost stopped me, what I learned about passing, posture, voice, makeup, safety, and being seen, because if you are watching this right now, you might be standing in a closet of your own wondering if you are brave enough, and I want you to know the answer is yes, you are. The first memory I have that hints at any of this is from when I was 6. My grandmother had a closet in the upstairs hallway that smelled like lavender and old powder, and she let me sit on the carpet outside it while she got ready for church. I watched her pin a brooch to a cream blouse and thought, in the honest way children think before they learn to be embarrassed, that I wished I had something to pin. I didn't have the word gender. I didn't have the word dysphoria. I didn't even have the word pretty. I just sat on that carpet and watched her hands move and felt something behind my ribs tighten and then loosen, and I wanted to feel that for myself. A couple of weeks later, I was alone in her house and opened the closet and pulled out a long cream skirt that dragged on the floor, tied the band 3 times around my waist, and walked up and down the hallway about 8 times. The dragging sound on the carpet, that whisper, 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 made me feel the way the floor feels when you finally step off a roller coaster. Safe and dizzy at the same time. Then I heard my grandfather's truck pull into the driveway, shoved the skirt back, pulled the door shut, and stood there breathing hard, convinced he could somehow tell what I had done. He couldn't. He walked in, gave me a cookie, asked if I had been a good boy, and I said yes, sir, and the word boy tasted like a coin I had stolen. I never told anybody. Not then. I just kept doing it in small secret increments that I am almost embarrassed to recount, but you need the truth of how this works, because most closeted people do not run around broadcasting this at 7. You learn the choreography of hiding. You learn that you cannot leave drawers open, cannot leave a closet door ajar, cannot hum while doing it because your mother will hear the strange joy in your voice. By the time I was 10, I had worn every dress, every skirt, every blouse, every robe my mother owned, and I did it on a ritual schedule, where I waited until both parents were asleep, walked on the balls of my feet to their room, listened for the slow rhythm of my dad snoring, and only then quietly pulled something off a hanger. I still remember the colors. The navy dress that smelled like her perfume, the heavier winter skirt with a tag that scratched my neck, the sleeveless floral from my uncle's wedding that fit me in the shoulders, which should have told me something, but I was a kid and figured I was just a weird shape. The point is that I was already practicing at 10. I was already training for the night I am about to describe. The only difference between then and now is that at 10 I never left the bedroom. At 13 I started growing into my body in ways that made the ritual harder. My voice dropped. I had to start shaving. I was an early bloomer, which felt like a personal betrayal, because the one thing I had been counting on, the hope that maybe puberty would politely skip me, evaporated the morning I saw a thin line of stubble above my lip. I coped the only way I knew how. Closed the bedroom door at night, put a towel down so the hangers would not click, learned how to wrap a sarong around my chest in a way that looked, in the dark, like a top. I had no online resources in 2003. There was no tutorial showing me how to tuck. There was a single library computer at school, where I once typed crossdressing into a search engine with shaking hands, and 90% of the results were either the wrong thing, or the wrong thing for a 13-year-old. I closed the browser, wiped the history, went home and tried again at midnight with my mom's green wrap dress, and I cried a little. Not because I was sad, but because for 15 minutes my shoulders relaxed in a way they never did in a t-shirt. When I left for college, I thought the problem had solved itself. New town, new name, new people who did not know me, and I assumed if I just got busy enough with classes and parties and girls I dated dutifully, the thing would burn itself out like a phase. It did the opposite. The first week of sophomore year, I met a girl named Riley who introduced me to a wider circle of queer friends on campus, and within a month I was in a room full of people who talked openly about gender, about pronouns, about clothes that did not match the ones they were assigned. I sat on that couch in their rented house with my hands in my lap and felt something I had not felt in years, which was recognition. I was sitting in a room where clothes were optional, where lipstick on a guy was normal, where a man in a crop top was just a person, and I was so overwhelmed I went home and did not sleep that night. That was the week I bought my first piece of clothing. A plain black skirt from a thrift store 4 blocks from campus, paid in cash, worn out of the store under my coat like it was evidence. That skirt still lives in the back of my closet in a garment bag, and 7 years later, I tried it on again, and I cried for a completely different reason. For about 4 years, I became what I would call a fully nocturnal crossdresser. Riley knew. 2 of the queer friends knew. Nobody else had a clue. I went to class in jeans, went to the gym in basketball shorts, went home, closed the curtains, locked the door, and became someone else for an hour or 2 every night. I became very good at makeup, mostly through trial and error and one badly written tutorial blog that kept telling me to contour my jaw with a color 2 shades too dark. I learned to tuck. I learned to walk in heels by holding a chair and walking back and forth in my dorm with the door locked for so many nights that my roommate thought I had a treadmill. I learned my undertones. I am not going to pretend any of this came easy. I lit small fires on my face with the wrong shade of foundation, burned my ears with a curling iron that had no temperature control, once used liquid eyeliner as a lip liner because the bottles looked the same, and my roommate heard me swearing in the bathroom, and I told him I was fighting a paper cut. By 24, I had a complete look. Wig, lashes, dress, heels, the whole thing. I could pass in low light, in selfies, in a mirror. What I could not yet do was walk out the front door. That last step, the one that turns secret into outing, dress up into identity, hobby into life, was the one I could not take for years, and I would like to tell you I was brave during those years, but the truth is I was a coward, and a coward who is very good at makeup, which is its own kind of sad. I told myself every possible excuse. Too cold, too hot, too dark, too risky, lived in a small town, my job was conservative, my parents still paid my phone bill. I don't romanticize the years of hiding, because I do not think they are romantic. I think they are necessary for a lot of people, but I do not think they're healthy forever. I lost weight during those years, then gained it back, then lost it again. I canceled plans. I avoided mirrors during the day and spent hours in front of them at night. I dated 2 women, both of whom I was awful to because I was pretending to be a person I was not, and my body kept telling them, and I kept refusing to listen. Then came the winter. I turned 26. My grandmother died in October. My grandfather followed in February, 3 weeks after fall. My mother started calling me every Sunday to ask if I was eating, and I kept saying yes, ma'am, and the word ma'am kept sounding less like a noun and more like a wish. I went to the funeral, and my mother wore a navy blue dress I had never seen her wear before, and the second I saw her in it my hands started shaking, which is a thing I've not had happen to me in any other context except when I am about to put on fabric that is not mine. We buried my grandfather on a Wednesday. That Friday I went back to my apartment, took a shower, locked the door, put on the navy dress I had driven 400 miles in a garment bag, and sat on the edge of my bed and realized, for the first time and very clearly, that I was running out of grandparents to bury, that the people who loved me most were getting older, and that I did not want to die without having been outside in this dress even once. So, I made a plan. Lesson 1. Pick a place open late, well lit, with cameras, staffed by people who are not going to call the cops on a customer just because the customer is presenting in a way they did not expect. I chose a 24-hour diner 4 miles from my apartment, on a road I had driven 100 times, in a part of town where there were always people. Lesson 2. Pick a weekday. Weeknights at 11 p.m. have far fewer crowds than weekends, and the people who are out at that hour are mostly alone, tired and reading their phones, and tired alone people almost never start trouble with strangers. Lesson 3. Tell one person where you are going. I told Riley, who now lived in Pittsburgh and could not physically come, but I called her and said, if I do not text you the word tulip by 1:30 a.m., please call the non-emergency line and tell them where I am. She did not laugh. which was the moment I knew I was doing the right thing, because Riley never withheld a laugh if it was deserved. Lesson 4. Clothes first. I laid everything out on the bed in order. Black shapewear shorts, a nude bra with the straps tucked. Under a tank top, the navy dress, a wig I had worn for 2 years that was a little too shiny, so I toned it down with baby powder, plain black flats, no heels, because for the first time outside, I did not want to add any extra reason to be stared at. Lesson 5. Makeup, and I am going to be specific here, because this is what the comments always ask for. I used a medium coverage foundation, set my jaw with translucent powder, which smooths without adding a weird line, used a nude lipstick because bold colors draw attention, and attention was what I was trying not to draw, used false lashes but the lightest pair I owned, lined my lips slightly outside my natural line, which is something any beginner can do, and it changes the way light sits on your face. I did not contour my nose. I did not bleach my eyebrows. I did not try to look 22. I tried to look like a tired 26-year-old woman on a Friday night, because tired 26-year-old women on Friday nights are the most invisible people in the world, and that is exactly what I wanted to be. Lesson 6. Walk the route in daylight in boy clothes so you know the cracks in the sidewalk, so you know where the street lights are out, so you know how long it actually takes to walk 4 miles in flats versus in heels. I walked the route the Sunday before, and timed it. 46 minutes at a normal pace. I walked it twice. The second time I counted cameras. 17 visible. 12 I assumed were hidden. Good enough for me. Lesson 7. Have an exit that is not the front door. Most late-night places have a back door. Most back doors have a working alarm. I checked the Tuesday before. There was a back door. There was a working alarm. There was a bus stop 20 feet from that back door, and the queue line ran every 15 minutes until 3 a.m. Now we are at the night itself, and I am going back through it slowly, because I want you to feel what it feels like to take that step. I had texted Riley at 11:30. I had on the dress. I had on the wig. I had done my makeup sitting on the bathroom floor because the bathroom mirror was the only one in the apartment with the right light. My flats were by the door. My jacket, the big puffy winter one I had owned since college, was on the hook. The plan was this: walk 4 miles, eat a piece of pie, walk home. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not linger. Do not make eye contact that lasts more than a second. If anyone says anything, smile. Keep walking. If anyone follows, go straight into the diner. If anyone follows inside, walk to the counter and ask loudly for the check, and then walk out the back door to the bus stop. At 11:47 p.m., I stood in front of the hallway mirror, and that is where this story actually starts. I looked at myself, and I want to describe the reflection honestly because I have spent years lying about this, and I am done. The wig was slightly crooked. My left fake lash was lifting at the outer corner. The dress, my grandmother's last dress, hung past my knees in a way that hid my calf muscles, which were, honestly, the most obvious giveaway on my whole body when I wore anything above the knee. My hands, knuckly, veined, big, were at my sides. My shoulders were still my shoulders, but the dress cut low enough and structured enough that they read as wide rather than as male. My hands still looked like my father's hands. There was no version of that mirror in which I looked like a cis woman. But there was finally a version in which I looked like somebody, and that somebody, even with crooked lashes and knuckle hands, was closer to the person I actually was inside than the person I had spent 26 years being. I touched the side of the wig. I straightened the lash with a fingertip. I picked up the flats. And I opened my apartment door for the first time while wearing a dress. The hallway smelled like detergent and the neighbor's cat. I took the stairs because the elevator has a security camera, and I did not want to be on camera for the first time in a building I still lived in. The stairwell had 2 fluorescents, one of which was dead. I walked through the dead side. I got to the lobby. There was a woman getting her mail. I walked past her. She did not look up. That is the first time I realized that 90% of the passing I had been afraid of was already happening without my consent. People do not actually study other people's faces in lobbies. People are almost all of the time inside their own lives. I pushed open the front door of the building. The air hit me. It was late November. It was cold enough that my breath made little clouds. I had not thought about that. My breath was a cloud. Most women's breath is also a cloud, but I had not thought about it, so for about 4 seconds I stood on the front step and giggled, like, actually giggled, at the absurdity of having been afraid of this for 20 years when the actual experience was, at first, just a feeling of being cold and trying not to trip on a crack in the sidewalk in flats. I started walking. I did not look at my phone. I did not put headphones in. I wanted to hear everything. I kept my keys in my right hand with the sharpest key between my fingers, which is the only self-defense I had ever been taught, and the only one I trusted. I counted my steps. I made myself take smaller ones than felt natural, because small steps keep your hips from swaying. Lesson 8. If you are a person with shoulders learning to walk in a dress for the first time outside, shorter steps and slightly inward-turned feet will let you settle into a more centered walk, without looking like you are performing. The first mile was uneventful. I passed a man walking a dog. The dog looked at me. The man did not. I passed a younger couple on the sidewalk arguing about whose turn it was to order food. The woman glanced at me. The man did not. I crossed a busy street. I waited at the light. A woman beside me sighed. I wanted to say something. I did not. Lesson 9. Your first time out, your mouth will want to do all sorts of things it has not practiced. Keep it shut. You can be a quiet woman. Quiet women are the most common kind. The third mile is where it happened, and this is the beat that some of you have been waiting for because this is the moment it got scary. A car pulled over to the curb about 40 feet ahead of me. A window rolled down. A voice called out, "Hey, sweetheart." I almost stopped walking. I am not going to lie. My knees locked. I kept walking. The car crept along beside the curb. The same voice said, "You dropped something." I had not dropped anything. I looked down at the sidewalk. Anyway, there was nothing there. The car kept creeping. The voice said, "You sure you are okay?" And the tone was different now. It was not the tone of someone trying to start trouble. It was the tone of someone in a passenger seat looking for an excuse to make sure a stranger on the street was fine. I said, "I am fine, thank you," in what I hoped was a female voice, which should not exist as a phrase, and which I am asking you to please forgive because my voice was 26 years old, and 26-year-old voices do not pivot in a single night. The car pulled away. The window went up. A hand waved. I waved back. I kept walking. I want to stop here because this is the first turning point of the whole night, and I want to make sure you understand what I learned from it. I had spent a decade planning an outfit for the worst-case scenario. I had imagined that every stranger on the street was a predator. I had assumed the worst of every interaction. And the very first stranger who spoke to me in a dress on a public street was checking on me because he thought I had dropped something. The world is not a horror movie. The world is mostly full of tired people in cars who glance twice and then go home to their dinner. The world is not safe, especially for visibly gender-nonconforming people in the wrong zip code, but the world, on a Friday night in November in the part of town I had chosen to walk through, was not what my fear had told me it would be, and that lesson has stayed with me through everything that has come since. I made it to the diner at 12:19 a.m. The digital clock above the counter said so. I walked in. There was a hostess, a young woman with red braids. She looked at me. She said, "Just one?" I said, "Yes, please." She walked me to a booth by the window. Lesson 10. If you are doing this for the first time, take the booth by the wall, not the window, because the wall is harder to photograph from outside. I sat at the window and I was fine, but I want you to have the lesson I did not. I sat down. The menu was laminated. I ordered a slice of apple pie and a coffee. The waitress was kind to me. She called me Han. She called me Han again when she brought the check. I am not going to pretend that being called Han in a diner at midnight while wearing my dead grandmother's dress is some grand political moment. It was not. It was just a waitress being a waitress, but it is the first time I have ever been called Han and felt that the Han was meant for me, the actual me, not the me I was performing. I sat at the diner for about 40 minutes. Nobody stared. A child at the next table said, loudly, to her mother, "That lady has big hands." Her mother said, "Shuh." The child said it again. I smiled at the child. The mother gave me a look I read as embarrassed for her kid and a little bit apologetic for me. I shook my head. "She has big hands," I said in a quiet voice, and I held them up like, "Look, big hands." The child laughed. The mother laughed. The waitress laughed. And for about 11 seconds, I was not a man in a dress in a diner. I was just a person in a diner being funny about my own hands. And those 11 seconds are the 11 seconds I have been chasing ever since. Lesson 11. If you are learning this for the first time, the moments that make it real are not the dramatic ones. The waitress calling you hon, the kid asking about your hands, the wave from the passenger in the car. Those are the moments that teach your body it is allowed to be in a body that is yours. I paid in cash, left a tip that was probably too big, walked out the front door because using the back door felt dramatic, and I did not want to give Riley a heart attack for no reason. I started walking home. The second half of the walk was different from the first, not because anything had changed on the street, but because I had changed on the street. I was no longer flinching at every car. I was no longer rehearsing what I would say. I was tired, my feet hurt, my wig was sticking to my forehead underneath, and I noticed, for the first time, that my body, which I had spent 26 years thinking of as the wrong body, was doing an enormous amount of work to keep me safe and keep me moving, and I forgave it a little for the shoulders and the hands and the voice and all the things I had resented, because it had just carried me 4 miles in a dress without falling down. I got home at 1:38 a.m. I texted Riley the word tulip. She texted back a row of small flower emojis. I locked the door. I sat on the edge of my bed. I took the wig off. I took the dress off. I washed my face. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror as just me, my actual face, my actual shoulders, my actual voice, and I looked at that face for as long as I could, because I needed to know, after everything, if the me underneath the dress could still exist in the world. The answer was yes. The me underneath existed, but the me on top of him, the one I had been hiding since I was 7, also existed, and she was not going back into the closet, and I was not going to be the only person in the family who ever knew her. That was a Friday. The next Monday, I called my mother. I did not come out to her. I just asked her how she was feeling and if my grandmother's navy dress still fit her, because I had been thinking about it. I told her, and she said it did not. It had shrunk in the wash, and she asked if I wanted it. I said yes. She mailed it the next day. It is still in my closet on the same hanger, and the only time I have come close to losing my nerve in the 3 years since is when I have had to wash it, because every time I hang it back up it smells faintly like lavender and old powder, and every time it does I am back in my grandmother's upstairs hallway at 7 years old, sitting on the carpet, watching her hands, wishing I had something to pin, and I am finally, the person with something to pin. Now I want to speak directly to you, because I have told you the night, I have told you the lessons, and now I want to tell you what the next 3 years look like. In case you are plotting your own version of this in your head, and you need to know it does not stop with one walk to a diner, it starts there, and from there everything gets harder, and everything gets easier. The second time I went out, I went in daylight. Saturday morning in early spring. Walked to a farmer's market 4 blocks from my apartment. Had a tote bag. Bought strawberries. The man selling them made a comment about the weather. I made one back, he laughed, I walked home. Nobody stared. 2 women nodded at me the way women nod at each other in public. I cried in the elevator of my own building. Lesson 12. Daylight is, in almost every measurable way, safer than most closeted people assume it is. You have been told your whole life that daylight is the enemy, that the public eye is the threat, and that is a lie sold to you by the same culture that taught you to be afraid of your own closet. Daylight is mostly fine. Daylight is mainly people at farmers' markets arguing about the price of strawberries. The third time I went out, I went alone to a movie theater at noon on a Wednesday. Sat in the back row. The movie was bad. I stayed for the credits, because the credits gave me an excuse to walk out of the dark theater into the lobby slowly enough to feel the weight of the dress on my body in public. Lesson 13. You do not have to do anything heroic the third time. The third time can be a matinee. The third time is for you to stop holding your breath. By the end of that first year, I had a steady little life. I went out twice a week, mostly in the early evening, mostly in places I had walked 100 times in boy clothes. I had built a vocabulary for myself. I had learned what passing meant in practice versus in fantasy, that passing is not the only goal, that some days I wanted to pass and some days I wanted to be visibly gender nonconforming, and both days were okay. I had learned that my voice was mine, and not something I had to fix. I had learned to stop apologizing for my hands. There is no version of this that is not partly grief and partly joy and partly just a person walking home from a movie theater carrying a large popcorn. Then I told my mother. This is the section I have been avoiding because it is the section that hurt. I told her in April on a phone call, on a Sunday in the kitchen of my apartment, while wearing jeans and a flannel shirt because that is who I was on the phone to her, because she had known me as her son for 27 years, and I was not going to ambush her in a dress like I had somehow ambushed my own adolescence for 20 years. I said, "Mom, I have something to tell you." She said, "Okay, baby." I said, "I dress up. Sometimes I have for a long time and I am not going to stop, and I am telling you because I do not want to hide from you anymore." She was quiet for about 9 seconds, which is an eternity on a phone call. Then she asked if I was safe. I said yes. She asked if I was happy. I said yes. She said, "Then I love you, and we will talk about this more when you are ready, but right now I have to ask, did you eat lunch?" I told her no. She made me a list of things to eat while she was on the phone with me. I ate one of them. She stayed on the phone until I finished. We did not talk about the dress again that day. She texted me 2 hours later, a single heart emoji and a picture of my grandmother's necklace, the one with a small blue stone that she had been saving for me since she was 16. I wore it the next time I went out. Lesson 14. Telling the people you love is not one phone call. It is a long relationship that begins with one phone call, and after which everything changes and also nothing changes, and both of those things are allowed to be true. You cannot know in advance which one a person will be. You can only know that the secret is too heavy to hold forever, and my advice is this: trust the person who is already quietly asking you questions, the one whose face changes a little when you half tell the truth, and then change the subject. That is the person who already half knows. Lesson 15. People are not monolithic. Your mother is a moving weather system, and the same weather system can produce a hailstorm one year and a clear blue morning the next, and the only way to find out which one she is going to be is to stand in her weather and watch what falls. I kept dressing. I kept going out. I added layers to my wardrobe slowly, on a budget, mostly from thrift stores, mostly in colors I was not brave enough for in my first year. I had a small group of friends who knew, including Riley, who had by now moved to Brooklyn, who I visited in February, who took me to a queer bar in the city where I was, for the first time, not the only person in a dress, where I was just a person in a dress among many people in many dresses and jackets and shirts and skirts, and whose attention was not on me because they had their own lives. I danced for the first time in those clothes, badly in flats, in the corner, with Riley's coat on because I had forgotten my jacket. I did not feel beautiful. I did not feel ugly. I felt like a body learning to take up space, which is the most underrated feeling in the world. Lesson 16. Your first queer space will probably not feel like home. It will be overwhelming. It will be too loud. There will be people whose look you covet, and people whose look scares you a little. That is normal. You just have to stay in the room long enough to know that the room exists. The months after that went by the way months go by. I changed jobs in May. Some old coworkers were fine. A couple were not. The couple that were not are not in my life anymore. The ones that were fine send me birthday texts on the right day for the first time in my life because I told them which pronouns to use in private messages. I went home for Thanksgiving that year and wore a shawl my mother had given me over a simple black dress, and my father, who I had not yet told and still have not told and may never tell, kissed me on the cheek and said, "You look nice tonight," which is the most father thing a father has ever said about a dress, and I will hold that sentence for the rest of my life. Lesson 17. A shawl is the most forgiving garment in the history of clothing. If you are nervous about your shoulders, a shawl will quietly handle them. Buy one. Keep one in your bag. Now I want to tell you what happened briefly because I do not want the story to end with the great uncomplicated victory that the algorithm wants me to sell you. 3 years into this life, I had a very bad night. A man at a gas station in a town I had stopped in on a road trip recognized something about me. I do not know what. I do not know if it was my hands or my voice or my shoulders, and he said loudly in front of his friends, things I am not going to repeat here. I got in my car, drove to a hotel, locked the door, sat on the bed, took the dress off, and cried for 2 hours. I called Riley. I called my mother. I told Riley I was done. I told my mother I was fine. The 2 sentences contradicted each other, and both of them were true. I sat in that hotel room for 3 days before I drove home. I did not put the dress back on for 6 weeks. I thought I had proven, that night at the gas station, that the world was exactly as scary as I had been telling myself for 20 years. I had not. I had proven that bad nights exist. Bad nights exist for every single person in every single body in this world. Bad nights do not cancel out the 11 seconds at the diner. The next time I put the dress back on, 6 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning by myself in my own apartment with the curtains open, I was not the same person who had been scared of bad nights. I was the person who had been through a bad night and was putting the dress on anyway. Lesson 18. Surviving a bad night is not the same as avoiding bad nights. You will have bad nights. You will survive them. The way you survive them is by having one friend who knows where you are, one person at home who is expecting a text, one route home, and one piece of memory you can grab when the bad night gets loud, which for me is the 11 seconds at the diner and the child laughing about my hands. Lesson 19. You do not get to choose whether some nights will be bad. You get to choose whether the bad nights will be the only nights. If the bad nights are the only nights you remember, then closeted crossdressing is winning, and closeted crossdressing is not your friend. It is a holding pen, and the door is unlocked, and you are the only one standing in front of it. We are almost at the end, and I want to tell you what is on the other side of all of this, what 3 years of doing it has made me, because I think you deserve to know what. You are buying with all of this fear, all of this closet time, all of this closeted crossdressing that we are talking about today. What it made me is not a different person. What it made me is a more complete person. I am still 6'1". I still have my father's hands. I still have my shoulders. What I am also now is a person who knows how to wear a dress, how to walk 4 miles at midnight, how to sit in a diner booth and be called Han and feel like the Han was mine. I am a person who has a mother who sends heart emojis and a grandmother's necklace with a blue stone and a friend in Brooklyn who will dance in coats with me. I am a person who has bad nights and good ones, and I have learned, finally, that those are not opposites, they are roommates and they live in the same apartment as me, and the lease is up in a year, and I am not renewing it. And if you are watching this on your phone late at night, in a bed you should be asleep in, with a wig on a stand in the corner of the room, and a dress on a hanger in the closet, and a question stirring in your chest about whether you are brave enough to put them on and walk out the door, let me tell you the answer. The answer is yes. The answer has always been yes. The answer was yes at 7 on the carpet outside your grandmother's closet. The answer was yes in the bathroom at 3 a.m. when you got your brows right for the first time. The answer was yes the night you opened the front door of your building and the air hit your face and you thought, oh, this is what the air feels like when I am not hiding. And the answer is yes right now, watching this, because you are still here. You have not turned it off. You are sitting in it. You are sitting in me. And that means you are not as scared as you thought you were. And that, more than any wig or any dress or any lesson about contouring, is what I want you to take from this whole stupid story. This is what I have learned about crossdressing, about being a man in a dress, about being a woman, about being neither, about being both, about being whoever you are underneath the layers you put on for the world. Most of the crossdressing content online is about the surface. How to tuck, how to contour, how to walk in heels, how to apply lashes. Those are real skills, and I will keep teaching them for the rest of my life. But the deeper skill, the one that lives underneath the surface, is the one I have been trying to teach you since minute one. And the deeper skill is this, that you do not need anyone else's permission to put on a dress and walk out the door. The only person whose permission you need is the one in the mirror. And that morning in the elevator, where I cried after the farmer's market, that morning I gave myself permission, and the rest of my life has been a long, slow, sometimes beautiful, sometimes ugly, sometimes both at the same time, learning how to keep that permission alive. If this story did anything for you, even one small thing, even one moment of recognition, then I have done what I came to do, which is to put another heart on a map of closeted people who are slowly, not walking out but walking toward walking out. And if you are one of them, I want you to know that I see you and I am proud of you. And I will tell my grandmother's dress about you the next time I hang it in the closet, because every time she hangs, the air in the closet smells like lavender, and every time it does, I am a 6-year-old on the carpet again, and this time, I finally have the brooch.